just to jump right in, the first question we have for you is so these protests in Minneapolis, they're devastating to see, and it just shows how when people are pushed to this point of hopelessness, like what happens when you lose all hope, what you revert to. But a lot of people have been shifting the conversation to criticism of what is going on and what we're seeing in these protests and in these riots, instead of focusing on the source of the issue at hand, right? So can you
Yeah.
talk to us a little bit about that?
Mark Lamont Hill, who's been a strong advocate of Palestine and civil rights in general, yesterday made the point that a lot of us have been making, that, first of all, words are important. Calling them riots is inaccurate. Turning over cars when your team wins the Stanley Cup, that's a riot. These have a political element to them and a social element to them. And he called them rebellion, and I don't disagree. I start off with the notion that, look, if we look at the terrible, murderous, and horrific legacy and history of white supremacy in this country, which not only enslaved people, but then made people second-class citizens even after slavery, and then hung black people from trees on a Tuesday afternoon because they were bored down in the South and in the North sometimes, and still today kills black people in the street without any accountability. I would say the overall response from the Black American community to that has been extremely peaceful. When I hear people say, oh, riots don't help anything and all that kind of stuff, I think that they are playing into the hands of white supremacy. Riots, as Martin Luther King said, are the language of the unheard. Nobody wants to riot. Nobody wants to go and perform property damage anywhere. This comes out of a deep, deep frustration. White supremacy was the recipe of the founding of this country. It's not some ill that came along later. Racism is the default state of affairs in America for anyone who's not white. It's not anecdotal. It's not an act that happens every now and then. It informs everything. Yeah, I mean, let's be clear. This country, when it was founded, was not only founded in a way that codified slavery and codified the expulsion of millions of and murder of millions of Native people from their land and romanticized these things. But then when they made this country and decided who gets to be a citizen, the naturalization laws from the founding of this country in 1790 all the way until 1952 mandated that in order to become an American, you had to be white.
Something about this did not sound right, so I looked at the law and saw that it included people of African ancestry, as in black people. Why didn't he include that part? Is it because it would have made it that much harder to sell the idea that America is a racist country? Is it at all possible that Amr Czar is suffering with psychological issues?
So I guess what I'm trying to say is that I love America. I really do. I just wish that she would love me back.
Let's say you love donuts. I'm not going to bring out any particular donuts. I don't want to malign any companies, but I love donuts. But let's say you really love donuts, okay? And you eat donuts all the time, every day, 20 donuts a day. Well, eventually you're going to be 500 pounds. In your middle age, when you're around 35, 40 years old, you might look in the mirror and say, I don't want to do this anymore in my life. And you stop eating donuts and you start eating healthy. Okay, what's going to happen to you? You're going to have stretch marks and you're going to have all the signs are going to stay on your body that you used to eat donuts all the time. You will still crave a donut every now and then. Well, donuts are the white supremacy that America was eating every day for a really long time, right? And so it doesn't just stop. It doesn't, the vestiges of it, the effects of it don't just stop because you stopped eating the donuts, right? You are still going to be living with the effects of that for the rest of your life. It's never going to go away. The most you can do is deal with it. It's like an addiction. And so that's how we have to view it in America. This never goes away.
But this issue about being aspirationally white in America by the legal codes, okay? I'm really glad that you brought it up, and we're privileged to have somebody like you in our community that's both a legal scholar and teacher by training, as well as somebody who's a great thought leader and political organizer. Well, no, thank you for that. No, thank you very much for that, Ahmed.
Yeah. So without getting, I teach a whole course about this. So come take the course at Detroit Mercy
Okay,
Law
30
School one day.
seconds. 30 seconds.
But like I said, America was founded by these old white guys, right? And they created a club in essence, and they needed to decide who becomes members of these clubs. Okay, how do you become a member? And membership was citizenship. And what they said was, in order to become a member, you had to be of good moral character, whatever that meant, and you had to be white. I mean, the word white was literally used in the law. And what do immigrant groups do when they come to this country? Well, they want to be like what Americans are. And what's American? White. And what's one of the leading features of whiteness in America? Anti-blackness. Yep. Anti-blackness is how whiteness, in fact, anti-blackness is how whiteness was first defined. That's why they came up with the terms white and black anyway. And we do it in our community. In Arabic, if you want to call somebody white, you don't call him white, you call him American. And what do we see from whiteness all the time? It hates blackness. And that's where a lot of that comes from. Whiteness asks you to take a side, not understanding that we're next. White supremacy has this knack of treating different communities differently. So it makes us feel like we're not really all victims of the same thing, but we are. We're all victims of the same thing. It treats us in different ways. And so while it might be police brutality and Black Lives Matter in the Black community, it is locking up children on the southern border for the Latino community. It is treating us like every single one of us is a terrorist when it comes to national security issues for the Arab and Muslim community. That's all about white supremacy. So we need to make sure that we are always, and by the way, we have to be actively speaking about it, not in a way that has to chastise or demean our community or the elders in our community. No, in an educational way that's full of love, to say, look, this is the reality, and it can turn on us in a second. So if we don't show solidarity with them, when it is our turn, they might not show solidarity with us. And there's no way that these things get solved unless we all stand together. Yes. And listen, always remember, white supremacy acts in many different ways, and it's always going to ask you to pick a side. And one of the ways it asks you to pick a side, it doesn't ask you, are you with white people or black people? It asks you questions like, how American are you? Malcolm X was an enemy of the state. Martin Luther King was an enemy of the state. The Prophet Muhammad was an enemy of the state. Jesus was an enemy of the state. Let's be clear. There's nothing wrong with the government and the cops not liking you, because when you stand up for justice, there's much more probability that they won't than they will.
You're going to get me in trouble. You almost got me saying takbir right there, Ahmed. I was just went on a takbir rant. You know what I mean? This is just want to round up a couple of lessons for us here. So we learned today that, white supremacy is something embedded in the DNA of our society, unfortunately, and in many ways, our modern condition. It is endemic to who we are in so many ways, but to think about it productively, think about it like you were addicted to donuts for 20 years and you're trying to wean off of it. You can do it. It's possible. You're going to have some scars. It's going to be tough. You might still want some donuts every now and then, but it's very much possible. And remember that a lot of other people have been eating donuts and a lot of other people trying to get off them at the same time. Right. And that's our shared struggle, is we're working against donuts and white supremacy at the same time. I really love the metaphor. It's very, very helpful.
Nice country you have here for me to poop on. The only thing sadder than this is there is more, a lot more, a fountain of anti-American, racist statements and actions from the Council on American-Islamic Relations.
I was just went on a takbir rant.